now all my light is gone. So
well, it does brighten up that back corner back there.
yeah.
I like that charcoal wall. That's what I just did in my
guys,
bedroom.
we are live.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello. So this didn't work at all last week, so we're kind of shocked that it worked this week. So thank you everyone who is tuning in today. This is the InnerStrength Empowerment Hour. I'm Lori DePietro stand-in, and these are the success coaches for my program, Joanne and Lori, or otherwise known as LT. And so we are so excited today to talk to you about a really important topic, and that is boundaries. It's something that I learned the hard way many years ago, that boundaries can make or break your journey. And it starts when you're young, usually, not being able to set boundaries, and it kind of filters out from there. So it's something that I was really not good at in any area of my life. And what I found out was that I was unhealthy in a lot of areas of my life, including my physicality, because I couldn't set boundaries. And so we work on that a lot in my program, and it's a good topic to bring to all of you to talk about where you are or not setting boundaries in your life and how that's affecting you. Because I think with women, most of the women that I talk to aren't really aware of how much it's negatively affecting them until I start asking questions in our mindset work. And then all of a sudden they have light bulbs going off. And so I think for a lot of us, we're sort of on autopilot with this subject, and we don't realize all the problems that we have because of it. So I hope that this will be an interactive discussion. I see some of you are logging on, so please feel free to ask questions and to pipe in with what your experience has been with boundaries, either negatively or positively, or to ask questions about how you should handle certain situations. So again, welcome and thanks for joining us. So the first question is, I feel like that women are way worse at this than men. At least all of the, most of the men that I know are pretty good at, setting their boundaries, putting their foot down, saying what they want. And I guess we should define a boundary, right? So what is a boundary? A boundary is a place where you have built a fence. So when I was growing up, I lived out in the country, like really far out on a dirt road. And between our house and the house next to us, which wasn't that far between the two of us, there was a tree line. And the tree line was really dense, but you could still get through. And so we always had a lot of cats and dogs. And whenever our neighbors would get a dog, it would come over into our yard and try to, eat our dog food. It would chase our cats, it would fight with our dogs. So this was an ongoing problem. And every once in a while, one of our dogs would go over there too. But it was mostly their dogs coming over. This went on for, the entire time I was growing up. So I'm talking about, at least 15 years that we were there. And now that I look back on it, I don't understand why they didn't build a fence. Like this went on, like there was times when it actually came to almost to blows. Like, we're going to call the cops, people are getting hurt type of thing between my dad and the guy next door. And so now that at the time it was like, this is just what it is, because you're little. When you're growing up, you just sort of accept things as they are and you don't question. As an adult, I look back on it and think, why in the hell? We had the money to build a fence. We weren't poor. We could have built a fence. So I don't understand why we didn't. And that would have saved our relationship with our neighbors for sure. And it would have saved a ton of aggravation. So a boundary is just that. It preserves your personal space. And it also sets the rules for your relationship with somebody else. So that would have set the rules that your animals are not coming over into our yard. And that makes us they say good fences make good neighbors.
Mhm.
So the boundary is there. So why do you guys think, though, that women struggle with this more than men? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think women mean to. I think it's just something that happens over time. And I think because, women are so much more capable than men for putting up with crap. And I feel like, like when a man gets a cold, he's dying. And when a woman is like, whatever, has COVID, she's still doing everything.
Well, you see, like, these, women in other countries will like give birth.
Yeah.
And then they'll be carrying the baby around while they're still doing other stuff. It's like
Right.
they just literally gave birth. It's like,
Yeah. And I think because we have such a high tolerance for how we can multitask and how we can put up with a lot of things going on at one time, I think it's very, very easy for the boundaries to get blurred very quickly, and we don't even realize it's happening.
right.
Yes,
We're
I think
so
that
overloaded. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think we have a lot of balls in the air at one
Mhm.
time, and we learn to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really say what we need because we feel like we've got it and we feel like we're stronger doing it. But what happens is it's eating away a little piece of you, and it's kind of taking who you are and the spark and the joy away because you're so overwhelmed and inundated with things that it eventually is going to come crashing down at some point, whether you're going to disengage somehow because you're going to be on autopilot. And what
Right.
we're trying to say is you can have a boundary and still be thriving and living and be happier.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also we're raised not to set good boundaries. We're raised to not, we don't want to seem like we're being a bitch. We don't, it's like if somebody asks you to do something, then that's the nice thing to do, is to do it. And like being a good woman means in a lot of ways not having any boundaries because you're doing for others. And so it's also, I think, an image thing that we all, buy into, that being a good person or being a good woman means you don't have these boundaries. And so, it's definitely too, however you were raised. In my family, depending on, you may have grown up in a really healthy environment or not. I did not. And so, when you grow up in a home where there's violence or abuse, that also your boundaries are very fluid.
Mm-hmm.
They're not really there because they change all the time according to what someone is telling you your boundaries should be. So, where have you guys personally struggled with boundaries, and how has that in the past negatively affected your life?
The first
Go ahead.
time I ever heard about boundaries has been about 15 years ago. Somebody, a counselor, actually recommended this book to me, and that's the title of the book, Boundaries, by Dr. Henry Cloud, and he's a psychologist. But it wasn't to do with anything about my physicality or anything I was going through at the time, weight-wise. It was, we had some people taking advantage of us because we were generous people. And he said, you need to set up some boundaries. And we did not realize what that was, because we just thought, well, you need to give, because, people that have less, or the people want to ask, and we think, oh, you feel guilty and we have it to give and let's give. And then we had some family members doing it. And that's when we started looking at the boundaries book. So as I have progressed in this weight journey, I see that boundaries, it encompasses a lot of areas. So now that I'm really honed in on it, I feel like I'm really good at setting boundaries, and I'm really good at and saying no, and that being a complete sentence, because I am focused on what I want to do and my why and all of that. Whereas some women just may not be sure about that. And so, like you say, it's blurred. And so they don't have a distinct line because they don't know where to start even.
So in your situation, it was the thing that brought it on for you was more like a financial thing, like
That's what
people were what
originally brought it
originally.
on. We really started getting uncomfortable thinking that we were being taken advantage of.
Okay.
And so we set up a boundary as to what we were going to do with people and what we were going to say. And it was certain people. It wasn't the whole world. I mean, it
Sure.
was a little finite little group, and we're just like, oh my gosh. And so that's when we learned to say no. And you know what? People get mad.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to deal with people getting mad, and you have to learn how to take the guilt. But they try to put guilt on you, but that's what we learned, is to not be guilty.
Right.
Because we had put things in place for people, not to give too much away, but we had a plan with people. And if they didn't want to go by the plan, then, I'm sorry, we just can't work with you anymore.
You're right.
But we'll help where we can, but you're not going to run ramshot over us.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Joanne?
I just think I didn't have any boundaries because I didn't know what boundaries were. And I've always been kind of the yes person in a lot of situations, whether it was, when I was younger, I was always okay, I'll do it. If, the neighbor said, can you babysit my kids? Okay, I'll do it. And then that kind of led to when I grew up and had my own kids, like, hey, can we do this? Okay, let's do that. And even, I found myself, actually, I went to the hospital because I got so run down from saying yes to everything because I could. There was no reason for me not to volunteer or, just take on extra things. And I just never realized that I could say no. So that's been a big.
Mm-hmm.
You were doing that even when we first started working together, and being a band mom. You made yourself sick.
Yeah, I did. I love volunteering. So it's a fine line for me, and it's a very slippery slope because I really have to set a boundary with myself to not volunteer for more than one thing at a time.
Right.
Otherwise it gets carried away because I can't say no.
Right.
That's the thing. There's so many things that are noble causes, and they're worthy, and you like it and you want to do it, but you've really got to pick and choose. And in that book we just read by Glennon Doyle in Untamed, she said, say no to things unless it just absolutely lights you up. I mean, it's got to be a resolute yes. I want to do that. Absolutely. I want to do that. And all these other, okay, yeah, those need to be gone.
Right.
Yeah.
I think for me, it started with, for me, I definitely didn't have good relationships. I had no good boundaries in my relationships, whether they were with men or with my family. I consistently picked men who were not, emotionally available, who, were, not right for me, who did things to hurt me. And I always thought that, I could fix them, and then I read a counselor, somebody recommended to me Codependent No More, which is an amazing book still after all of these years. I'm sure they've updated it a million times by now, but that was the first time that I really understood what I was doing was damaging to me, and also that it didn't make any sense. That, it sort of goes back to what you were saying, Lori, that, you think you're helping people, but really most of the time it's just a negative dynamic where people end up taking advantage of you. And it's not, and they're going to take advantage of whoever is there to take advantage of. It doesn't even have anything to do with you. I think we inflate our importance in that equation too, that, these types of people are really going to do this to whoever will let them. It's nothing special about you other than you are agreeing to it.
It's next. They're going to get mad, and then they'll go next. Who's next?
Right.
Right.
And I mean, not everybody certainly is evil or has bad intentions, but it doesn't mean that they're healthy. And so they can just be sort of, they're looking for another unhealthy person to engage with them. And so we can't raise our hand when that happens. And so I often, I tell the story, about my mom, having really not good boundaries with my mom. My mom would even, like when I was in high school, would make friends with the guys I was dating and call them and stuff. Like it was just a really, it's no wonder, when you look at my background, it's definitely like not hard to see why I had boundary issues. Because, I was saying at that time, like, this is weird. And, you have an adult telling you, no, it's not weird. This is okay. So, there's a lot of things that happen to us in our lifetimes, but then, it becomes like the normal thing where we are saying yes to things we shouldn't say yes to, even if it's something, for your school or your church. And
Right.
what I think, what I have found with working with women is that, especially when it comes to doing like you guys are saying, like noble causes, right? Stuff that does actually need to get done, and that's a good thing. Is that women will actually choose to do those things rather than work on themselves. It's easier, to say, well, I just can't do this right now because, I'm so wrapped up in this thing with my church, and I'm doing this thing for the school, and I just can't deal with it right now. And that goes on for years. It goes on for years. I mean, I've dealt with women who are, considerably overweight with type 2 diabetes, like all of these different things, and they can't make time for themselves because they're volunteering too much.
Because the hamster has to run on the wheel, and when you're running on the wheel, then we can't think about anything because we're just too busy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So what are some examples of other, like, that you have seen with either the women that you're working with in the group, obviously vaguely, not specifically, or with friends or family? What other kinds of boundary issues have you guys seen in your lives that, it's been apparent that this is a big problem for this person? Like I was talking to somebody last night, and we were talking about like, for her, it's her kids. And she's like, my kids are perfectly capable of doing things for themselves, but I need to jump in and do things for them because that's what love is, but she's like, it's causing friction between her and her husband because her husband's like, they're capable of doing this on their own and you're not letting them do it. I had an adult male that I was working with when I was doing personal training, who was a married man who had kids and everything. Like his mom, when he stopped working with me, his mom called me and was like, I think that you need to contact him because he's really not healthy right now. He's gone back to his old ways and you need to work with him. And she's like, but please don't tell him that I called you. I didn't even know who she was. So like there's people have such, like the stuff that you hear with people is just crazy. So what kind of stuff are you guys seeing?
I'm seeing the same, like a lot of it is with people's kids because we're kind of all in this age group now where our kids are getting they're either preteen, teen, or, going to college, and they're fully capable of doing so many things. And we have a hard time letting that happen. And I see a lot of that. And I also see, because we are at this age, we also have aging parents. And so in some instances, people's moms live with them, and that can be, or they are their caretaker, or, they see them a lot because they have to take care of them daily. And so that becomes a big issue for people because, I remember one of the women in our group saying, this was about a year ago, but it was so like common of a thing that she was going out to breakfast with her mom, and her mom was going to expect her, because this is what they always had done, she was going to expect her to share like whatever enormous amount of food. They split whatever it was. And this woman was trying to change her eating. And she said, but my mom's going to expect me to still share that with her. And it was, whatever breakfast restaurant it was, I'm sure it was loaded with butter and sugar and
TJ's or somewhere.
Yeah, she didn't want to do it, but she also knew that that's what her mom expected. Right. And this was somebody who's, our age and in her 50s, and her mom's in her 90s or 80s. And, you can't even say no to your mom at that age. That there needs to be a boundary there. So I
I've
think
talked
we're
to
in the middle of kids and parents and
Yeah, sandwich generation. That's what we
Mhm.
are.
that is a good point, because I have, I've talked to women who have said things like, my mom expects me to call her every day. And if I don't call her, she, puts a guilt trip on me. And that it has to be at this certain time every day. Or I had someone tell me I have to call my mom twice a day when I'm on my way to work and on my way home. And these are women in their 50s, and they're like, this is causing a problem in my life. But I can't say no. And I'm like, well, why can't you say no? Is your mom's, what's going on? And it's not that anyone's sick or hurt or that there's any problem. It's just that it's a control issue. That their parent is still trying to control them and they're still allowing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
it's really sad, because like you said, it will hold them back. It's not just about phone calls. It becomes about so many other things. And it holds them back in their lives. And it's a sad situation.
And I see women that just don't make enough time for themselves at all. They are run ragged. So when they get home, they haven't put in time to do any kind of exercise or maybe prep or plan a meal. So they kind of get talked into picking something up or ordering something because that's what the kids are asking for. When we all know that it's going to be healthier if you prepare something for yourself, and it's going to be healthier if you make a little time for a walk in the afternoon or to go to bed at a decent hour instead of past midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. I mean, it's just, but they're so overwhelmed with getting it done, and you could make somebody do the laundry or help with the dishes, and you don't have to be the only one doing all of that. If you have kids that are old enough to pitch in, they can help.
I was saying to the person I was talking to about, her kids, I was like, I taught Tucker to do his laundry when he was 12. And so he does his laundry. I don't, it's, it is doing things for other people. It's a love language too. I mean, so, we can give ourselves some slack in that, part of, you love your kids, you want to do things for them, but your kids will manipulate you also. Like I love Tucker. So for those of you who don't know, I have 2 adult children also who are out of the house. They're 27 and 29 and have their own lives. But Tucker is 16. And so he's perfectly capable of fixing himself a snack, but I could be in bed and he would be like, can you fix me some scrambled eggs? And I'm like, so, I mean, your kids will also take advantage of you too, if you let them. It's like any other relationship. And so setting good boundaries with them, I always tell women, I'm like, don't you want your kids to grow up and end up with a partner who takes good care of themselves and who sets boundaries and doesn't run themselves ragged at their own health expense for the kids or whoever, It's like trying to think of big picture, that we're not raising kids, or raising adults.
Right. And that's exactly right. And that does not mean that you don't do things lovingly and you don't help out. But if you're seeing a pattern that you are frazzled and under the pile every day,
Right.
there's your flag. Your flag is waving.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to help a little bit, and we're all going to help and do things. Nobody's ever going to turn a kid away or not want to help, or we'll just have that mom that you want to. But if you are really at wit's end all the time, a flag's waving.
Right. Yeah. So Jennifer says, I can set boundaries, but I expect a lot out of myself. I feel like I should be able to do it all or do more. And I just think that's a trap that all women are falling into. I talked to someone who was like, I set unrealistic goals for myself where I am, I think I'm going to work all day and then come home and clean the house and clean the oven and do 2 loads of laundry. And I put all this stuff on my list. And then when I don't get it done, I'm disappointed in myself. And I'm just like, that's, to me, that is self-sabotage. You're setting yourself up to fail when you do that. So that's the question I think to ask ourselves when we are putting that much pressure on ourselves. And we know, some part of us knows that's not going to happen. And that's even what this woman was saying. She's like, I know it's not going to get done. It's like, well, then why, these aren't like things that actually, cleaning the oven isn't something that You
No.
know,
It-
yeah, this
it
is
can
not an
wait.
emergency. Yeah. So,
That's a thing.
And-
People clean their ovens, really?
yeah, well, right. That's the other thing. I was like, wait, what? But yeah, I mean, these are good examples of the ways that we set ourselves up. And when we do, like, you know, we feel guilty.
Mhm.
And that's not gonna, when we have those negative feelings about ourselves, I always tell people, when it comes to your health, you have to do it because you love yourself. Because if you do it because you hate yourself, if you're like, oh, I'm so sick of myself, I'm disgusted, you know, all of this stuff, you're setting yourself up for failure because you've already decided you don't deserve to succeed.
Mhm.
And so the slightest thing is going to happen to knock you right off your game because you don't really believe that you can do it and you don't really believe that you're worth it.
Mhm.
So when did you realize when it came to your, you know, when did you realize you needed to create better boundaries when it came to your life or your health? And how did you do it? And how did it feel? Because I know the first time that I created a boundary and I actually voiced it and stuck to it, I felt like I was going to hurl. Like it was very scary for me. It was just like,
Mhm.
now I'm so much better at it. I'm it's so much easier. But at the beginning, it was so hard. So what have you guys, when did you realize it? And then what happened from there?
I think I realized it when I joined the program and you told me I needed to set boundaries. you're like, what are you doing? Why don't you have any boundaries? So thank you for telling me I needed to and explaining what they were, because I think a lot of times boundaries, when you hear the word, you think they're so harsh. That's such a harsh thing to, especially
Yeah.
if you're the yes person, which I've also learned more about being the yes person and how that's not always, a good thing. But I think, when you start out trying to make the boundaries, it seems like you're being so hard on everyone and hard on yourself. And really it's not, it's not, if you can switch your thinking about boundaries and think of it not as saying no to everyone and everything, but saying yes to yourself. When you set that no, I'm not going to do that, what you're really saying is, yes, I'm going to take time for myself, or yes, I'm going to set something up, a system in my house, or
It's for you.
it's
It's
for
not
you, it's your
right.
own benefit, and it helps your kids and your husband and whoever else lives in your house. It actually makes things better, but it is a scary hurdle to get past in the beginning.
So give us an example of where you have set a boundary and then how did it go? Tell us how it went.
Well, one of the things that I was dealing with really bad, especially when COVID hit and everybody's home, kids are bored. They've got all this money in their bank accounts from Christmas because, we got the Christmas money and never got to spend it.
Yeah.
And so they're coming to me all day long, like, can we order this on Amazon? Can we do that? Can we order these things? Can we buy that? Like literally all day long, no matter what I was doing, if I was in the middle of a task. And it became so overwhelming. Like I couldn't even think straight. And so I said it and I said, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. You can still ask me these things. I'll be glad to help you order stuff online, but come to me after 6:00 at night. Those things aren't going to happen during the day. If you want to do something, you want to go do whatever, or you want to order something or ask me a question, do it after 6:00. And it felt at the beginning like I was saying, I don't want to talk to my kids all day long, but really it set them up for understanding that people's time is valuable, I think, and understanding how to wait, because I feel like kids these days don't know how to wait for anything. Instant gratification, and I feel like it gave me just a little breath in the day where I could think my own thoughts.
Well, and you're ready then, instead of it being a combative thing every time they come to you, you're ready to talk about it because you've set that boundary. So it makes you like, I always think about being, a cheerful giver. And that doesn't mean that you're always cheerful every time you give. It means if you can't be cheerful about it, then you need to set some boundaries and figure out what's going on. And so that way you can be like, I'm ready to talk about this.
Mhm.
Right.
And I think whenever you feel that being frazzled or feeling a little bit about something, that's like a physical symptom of your body trying to say, that's not what you should have answered, or that's not how you should have
Yeah,
responded.
we get that feeling like,
Mm-hmm.
but then we don't, it just makes us irritable because we don't act on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So because we have the holidays coming up, do you mind saying a little about the boundary issues you had last year around food?
Mm-hmm.
Because you had to set a boundary with your family about some things, and that was hard. So
Yeah.
because there's some boundaries are not that hard to set. Like you saying with your kids, come to me after 6 o'clock. It's, it feels weird, but it's not as hard as when somebody is an adult
Mm-hmm.
and they are pushing you and you
Mm-hmm.
have to set the boundary. So do you mind saying a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, because I was about 6 months into my new way of living and eating, and a holiday was coming, and we had canceled Thanksgiving because all of us got really sick. So that was, we kind of dodged that bullet. And then because I wasn't going to have a turkey for Thanksgiving.
And you said you always have stuff at your house.
What's that?
You always had things at your house.
Yeah, we did. And
Yeah.
so, like the Thanksgiving, we usually have it at our house. And so I wasn't going to have a turkey. And, my mom kind of threw down about that. Like, you have to have a turkey. And I'm like, this year we're not having a turkey. And so thankfully we got out of that. But then Christmas came, and it was all about this, the Christmas ham. You have to have this Christmas ham. And I'm like, really? Do we have to have the Christmas ham? And so I was trying with my sister, because my sister was coming in from out of town. We were trying to make a menu that would suffice. And really, it's not about the food. It's not about what the food is. As long as nobody's starving, you can have whatever you want. And my mom really dug her feet in about having to have meat at the Christmas. So we compromised, and I ended up getting it catered, because it really just threw me down, because I was really racking my brain of how to please everybody. And
Right.
we ended up getting a Polish restaurant to cater pierogies,
Mhm.
and they have vegan and gluten-free pierogies. And so I got a tray of those, and then I got a tray of the meat ones, but all the meat was like inside, so I didn't have to look at it. It didn't have to be like this big carcass on display.
Right.
And so I did that with a bunch of salads and appetizers, and it was fine. And I didn't have to cave and do all the butter and all the cream and all the things that
Right.
were expected to be there.
What we do with that, because I know with this coming up, maybe other people are wondering about this. So when I first started with this journey, it was more like we would do potluck. And so if somebody wanted to bring a turkey or a ham or whatever they wanted to bring, that was fine. I just wasn't going to make it. So
Mhm.
they could bring it in, and then I would make, a bunch of other stuff. There's so many things too that people, you can make plant-based, sides, and people are not even going to know the difference because of the substitutes that they have now with butter
Mhm.
and, cream and cheese and all these things. I'm gonna post a picture later because I bought some things to make a green bean casserole that's going to be vegan and gluten-free, and I'm pretty excited about it this year. I've let other people handle that, and we've never landed on a recipe that we all love. So I'm trying something a little different this year, so I'll post a picture later. But the point is that, there's definitely ways to compromise. And so your boundary doesn't even have to be like my way, like it's all me. It can be
Mhm.
like, here's the compromise I'm willing to do.
Mhm.
And that's it.
Mhm.
Here's like, and like you said, like for you, it was, what we're going to do is we're just going to cater. And that way everybody gets something that they want. Or for me, like, you know what, everybody can just, if you want it, bring it. Here's what I'm having. If you want to bring something in addition to that, that's fine. You know, so, but I know that that time was really difficult for you because, you know, it's with your mom, and your mom was basically, you know, making you feel like you didn't care about the family if you didn't do things that way.
Yeah, because that's how we've always done it. And so that's
Right.
how Christmas should look. And it doesn't have to look like that.
Right.
We're all together. We're all having a nice time. And it was fine. It was totally fine.
Exactly. Yeah. So what about you, Lori? Where have you seen, you know, when was, I know you mentioned this time
Yeah.
about the financial thing. Has there been other times in your life, especially with your health journey, that you felt like you needed to set some boundaries?
Yes. The boundaries that I have really honed in on now is I'm always going to make time for my meditation. I'm always going to make time for my exercise. I'm always going to have time for food prep and what I'm doing. I mean, it's going to happen. It's just like you brush your teeth at night. I mean, you wash your face. I'm gonna exercise. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna drink my water. I'm gonna do it. And it's just become, I've just honed in on it with this program. I think it's just made it even more crystal clear. I'm still involved in things. I'm still doing several things at the church, but I got asked recently to do 2 things. One was a very involved thing that was going to be more than a year, and one was kind of a finite event. I wasn't excited about either one of them. They both were like, oh, you can do it. You've done it before. You're great at this. And yes, I can do it. I have no doubt I could do it, but I didn't want to. And it's not that I'm not plugged in, because I am plugged in other areas. And so what this program, when I say I've honed in on it, I'm doing it without guilt now. My no is a sentence. It's got a period at the end of the no. I don't have to explain why I don't want to do something. They're noble causes. They're great. I'll tell you what happens. The way I look at it, this is my brain, how I did this little spin on it for myself, whether it's this way or not. This is what I believe. I believe that some people that are on staff or whatever ask you to do something because you're an easy yes, and they know that it will be covered because you've done it before, and and I can check my box because she's going to do it. But when you say no, you're like, oh my gosh, then they've got to find somebody else. Well, you know what? They can find somebody else. And the way I look at it is somebody else may be wanting to be asked, and they may want to step up to do something like that, because I'm not in a little community here with a couple of people. My church has over 5,000 members. You can find somebody else to do it. Just like in the school, we have somebody else is going to do it. I was asked to do something with my neighborhood. Could have done it. Didn't really want to, said no. But I have had some things like where the school asked me to do it, wanted to do it, couldn't wait to do it. Oh yes, put me on that. Now see, I'm going to be more qualified and a better worker and more friendly and upbeat and more positive and probably more productive because of me saying yes to what I really want to do. When I am doing something I don't really want to, I'm going, oh my gosh, why did I say I've got to go to this meeting now? I got to go to that. Yeah, I don't want to. Nobody wants somebody like that. So why do we make ourselves do it? So that's what this program, I'm just real honed in it. And you're not going to interfere with my personal time. You're not going to take away from what I'm doing to help with my health, because that's already penciled in. I don't even pencil it in. I just do it. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah. My thing is more with my family. So what I used to do when I started going for my runs, when I was training for a half marathon, my runs were longer. And so when I would leave the house, I was only going to be gone for a couple hours, but I would be like, make sure that they had something to eat. And I would make sure that the animals were fed first. And I would do all these things. I'd be like, okay, guys, you don't have to worry about anything because I did everything. And now I can go. And I just started to realize how ridiculous that was. Like, why am I making sure, Tucker was probably 13 at the time, John is the grown ass adult. Like, there's no reason for me to constantly be like, let me make everything okay for you. So I remember one day I was like, I got to get this running. And I, I hadn't made anything to eat for anybody. And I just thought, I'm not going to. I'm just not going to do it. So these guys are perfectly, I mean, John's a chef, for God's sake. Like, they're perfectly capable of figuring this out. I mean, even if they weren't, order pizza, bake, whatever, it's fine. So I remember that day because I was like, okay, guys, I'm leaving. And John was like, okay, did you feed the animals? I was like, nope. He was like, oh, okay. Like, it's like, what did you do anything for dinner? I'm like, nope, I'll be back in a couple hours. And that was the only conversation we've ever had about it. Like, now, it's not like I needed to sit down and be like, all right, guys, from now on, when I leave I just don't do it. And
Right. And the world did not end, did it?
It did not.
It did not. Right.
Not. And I don't.
I finally got to that point where I can just walk out and not feel like I have to set up. I mean, I kind of did before this meeting because I know my kids are having their lunch break right now. I'm like, I'm going to set this up on the counter. You come down and get it when you're ready.
Yeah.
They're not bothering me. Yes. Because then everybody would be in here. But it's a freeing thing when you finally start just doing that. It's so scary in the beginning when you're like, oh God, they're all going to just wither away while I'm gone for an hour on a bike ride or whatever. And
well, I will say
you come home
easier.
And
it gets easier, and
and
as you get older, it gets easier. That's the benefit of aging. It gets easier in a lot of different areas, and you're more unapologetic because you know what? We have one go around this world, and we have a finite amount of time. And when you hit middle age, 50, you start to say, I better take care of me and do what I want to do because, the time is fragile.
Right. And I always said, after I saw, what happened with my grandma and her, illness because she had heart disease, then which led to Alzheimer's, and I don't, I was always like, I am not going to spend the last 20 years of my life, 30 years of my life dying, just trying to make it through every day. I'm just not doing it, and so that is a place where you can start, to put your foot down and just say, I'm not, it's not okay if you do decide that. Like, it's not selfish for you to say, I don't want to live like that. Right. And I'm going to take care of myself so that I don't have to live like that. Because honestly, in the end, you end up, the thing I think is selfish is when you don't take care of yourself and then you're expecting your family to do it for you. Mm-hmm. And I told John when he wasn't taking care of himself, I was like, if something happens to you that is unexpected, I am here for you. But if you just start to, if you're not taking care of yourself and you start to have illnesses because of that, I'm not taking care of you. Mm-hmm. Because you've just made a choice. And then now you're going to put it on me to take care of you. No, I'm like, I'm not doing that to you. We shouldn't be doing it to each other. To me, it is our marriage is a pact that we're going to not only support each other and love each other and, be there for one another, but promote each other's health, to urge each other to be the best that we can be so that we can have as much time together as we want to and not be sick. Mm-hmm. Exactly. The whole time, because that was the thing is my grandparents, they had all these plans and they didn't get to do it because because my grandma, now in their case, back then nobody was telling my grandma, here's what you need to do, whereas now people, have answers in terms of nutrition. And so, but because I have no doubt, because she was such a lively person and they line danced and they traveled and they did all this stuff. Like she was a singer. Like, if somebody would have said, all you have to do is change your diet, then she would have done it.
She would have done it.
Nobody was saying that. And so, I think it's, and I told John that. So that's another good example of a boundary is that I'm just like, if you don't want to take care of yourself, that's on you. It's not going to be coming back to me later. Right. If this is about you not taking care of yourself, if you don't have enough, care for yourself, then don't put it on me later, and so he and I have that he knows.
Right.
And I know, Joanne, for you, you have started to bring the hammer down on your man about that.
I have no comment on that at this time
Okay,
because
okay.
it's a bad issue because, you know, I'm over here trying as hard as I can and preparing stuff. And then the things come in the house and I'm like, and you know, like you said, they can do what they want. And when you're trying to transition your family over to your way of living and your lifestyle, the more you push, the more they push back. So
Right.
it's back and forth, but right now
Yeah.
we're kind of on a down slope with that. So
Well, and yeah, people are adults and you just have to let go of that and let them do what they're going to do. But I had, when John was still in that headspace of just drinking pop all the time and eating like crap and all the stuff that he was doing, the thing that made me mad is then it was influencing Tucker, because Tucker would see that stuff and be like,
Yep.
oh, and I have, like, because John was drinking just straight up a case of Pepsi, or not a case, a 12-pack of Pepsi every day. And so it's like, I am at the point in my journey where that didn't affect me, but I have a kid in the house who's saying, can I have some Pepsis? And can I get some of this lunch meat and subs and, all of this cancer causing meats and all these things. It's like, and then I'm like, you know what, honey, I'm like, if you want to eat that stuff, that's fine. But when Tucker is asking you to bring this stuff home for him, that is because he knows you're eating it all day. That's a problem for me.
And they learn very quickly to manipulate whichever parent, because we were on that call the other day and you saw my husband and my kids sneak out to go to Dairy Queen. Right in the middle of the day. And I was like, where's everybody
going? And they were
going?
freaked out because you were in the car and they didn't know you were out there, because they were trying to do it without letting you know.
Yes. See, so they know how to manipulate, and they know.
Yeah, so Tucker would just text John, like not even ask me. Because when he was younger, he would ask me, hey, can I ask John if I can have one of these? And I would kind of like be like, well, what has he had today? And when's the last time he had a treat? And sure. But, then he got to an age where he'd just text John and say, hey, bring me home this, and this. And John would come home with this bag of crap. And it's one thing if it's every once in a while, but then it was just getting to be constant. And I'm just like, that's ridiculous. So that's the other thing is, we all have to be aware of the influence that we have around, for our family. And now, they are, they know that if you are obese by the time that you're 10 years old, that you have a 70% chance or greater of being obese for life.
Right. And we just went to the pediatrician a couple weeks ago, and she asked something that I had never even imagined would be asked. She said, does high cholesterol run in your family or your husband's family? And I don't think it does in mine, but in my husband's, it does run really bad. And she said, okay, I want to get both of the kids cholesterol checked. I'm like,
yeah, they do 15. That now.
They're 15 though.
I know.
Yeah. So she ordered it and I was like, oh
you have kids. You have kids as young as 3 presenting with heart disease now.
Yeah.
With atherosclerosis. I mean, it is absolutely awful because, like, I don't know, like, I remember the first time that I had a Big Mac, I was probably like 14. You know what I mean? Like, we lived in a rural area. I didn't grow up eating that stuff. Whereas kids now, you know what I mean? Like, every generation, it gets more unhealthy because we have, because of our food system.
And it's so accessible. Look at all of these food delivery services. You can get things from McDonald's and Wendy's from DoorDash.
I know.
I mean, it's everything. Little restaurants like that. You expect the big ones, but not fast food.
The convenience factor, because this goes right back to the boundaries, because we are so overloaded. We rely on those things more and more as time goes on, because I can't, almost every single woman that I talk to is like, well, but I don't want to have to cook. I don't want to have to make anything. Or I don't have a lot of time to learn how to cook different things than what I'm making now. Or we do a ton of takeout because I have so little time when I get home, or so little energy because they feel so crappy. So, these places, it's convenient. It's convenient to just stop or have it delivered or whatever. And, but it's not just affecting us, it's affecting our kids as well.
Mhm.
And that's where the boundaries come in, with setting boundaries with yourself, which, you know, I kind of knew. I had gone to a bunch of parenting seminars and they talk about setting boundaries for your kids and how they'll be better off if you set the boundaries. And so I kind of knew that area of boundaries, but I never in a million years thought about setting boundaries with myself until you
Right.
said it. And you're like, when are you going to get over your own BS, you know, get past it and stop allowing it for yourself? And I was like, I never thought of setting boundaries for myself. And in a situation where you're so overwhelmed that the only thing you can do is drive through a fast food place, you need to set some boundaries with yourself, because something's going wrong if that's the only option you think you have. You need to look at it and go, I really need to set some boundaries with myself and get these other things in line so that I don't end up at 6 o'clock or 6:30 or whatever at Taco Bell or
I
wherever.
tell people every day, it's so funny because when I so many women that I talk to, they're like, well, I'm usually great during the day, but then dinner time comes and I'm in such a hurry and things are crazy and this, and this. And I'm like, okay, but how long has dinner time been coming?
Yeah, right. It's a thing
Like,
every
if you're
day.
50, it's been coming for 50 years. So like, we
Right.
keep hitting these roadblocks, we keep hitting these potholes again and again in our lives full force without taking the time to figure out, how do I drive around this thing?
Mhm.
So we just hit it every day and we keep doing the same things over and over again. And it is a coping mechanism,
Mhm.
because we're not setting the boundaries that we need to set with ourselves and with the people around us so that we can take care of ourselves.
Right. And it's all doable. When you were talking, we're all three different in the way that we approach doing food.
Mhm.
Joanne loves to do batch cooking and does
Mhm.
things ahead of time and already has a plan. You just like to do quick, easy meals that you can do in less than
On the
30
fly.
minutes.
Yep.
I like to order Green Chef, and I get the gluten-free, the vegan options, because that's just something that I like to do. But I like the quick and easy. And when I want to experiment and do things, I do new recipes and all that from your book and from other places. But we all have a different approach to it, but we're
Right.
all at the same end.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Boundaries, that, setting up, it's not just boundaries, but it's setting up a structure for yourself,
Mhm.
a doable structure. And like I was saying, either on our last call or maybe in one of our coaching calls, I was talking about um, someone saying a quote that I heard was that, am I deficient in some way, or is this situation not serving me?
Mhm.
And I think that's a really valid question to ask in any situation. Like, okay, is this set up for me to succeed and I'm just not getting there? Or am I set up to fail right now?
Mhm.
Mhm.
So that's the thing, is we're setting ourselves up to fail and then beating ourselves up when we do.
Mhm.
And so that is getting a structure in place, which and that's a great point, Lori, because we all have, the structure doesn't look exactly the same for
We
everybody.
are
but it
definitely
has
not
the
one
same
size
result.
fits all.
No.
Different. Yeah.
So, how have you seen, I guess we've talked about how, setting boundaries has been so important for our health. And I've talked about a lot how, it's a domino effect. When you get in control of your health, it just filters out into every other area of your life. It's so interesting. How have you seen, with the women that you're working with in the program, have you seen this happen with other women where they've started to set boundaries and good things have come of that? And if
Mhm.
so, what would be an example?
Well, I know just one of the women that I've been working with for a long time, she's set some, there's big boundaries that make big impacts. And then there's little boundaries too that make big impacts. And she's done the really big boundary where she's gotten a divorce and said, I'm not going to let you treat me that way. And I just talked to her the other day, and the boundaries are continuing, because I asked her about, when you move all your stuff into your place, are you, getting movers or whatever? She's like, I'm not bringing anything from the old place. I'm getting every single thing new. And
Yeah.
I thought she's setting up a new structure, a new
Yeah.
way of how her life is going to look with her boundaries in place, and
Right.
not living under somebody else's way of doing things. And that's a huge win.
Great.
Yeah. And that's a big example. And I have a big example too. Now that's getting a divorce. And what my example is this woman's going to change jobs because she realized she's in a toxic environment and she's doing something that she's going to love, that she's wanted to pursue. And that may be big, but there are small things. We have women that have just decided, I'm going to walk a 5K for the very first time.
Yeah.
That is something very doable. That is very attainable.
Great.
You have people that say, I am now, when I go out to eat, I now know what to look for and how to order because I don't have to get the same thing I got every time. I can order off the sides. I can ask the waiter to do certain things a certain way. You don't want to bother people, or you don't want to be the problem at the table, but they expect it and you can do it and you're going to get what you want and you're going to get what you need.
Right. Right.
So those are concrete. You could do that today.
Right.
Right.
That's the thing, is it can be, I think you don't have to, I sort of started with divorce as well. So that's a big boundary to set. You might not be there or need to be there like I did.
Right.
But you can start with smaller things. You can start with, like I have people who are setting boundaries with their friends, like, I'm not going to go out and get drunk every time that we're not going to drink 2 bottles of wine every time we see each other. Like I can't do that. So like, there's boundaries that you can set in your life, even with your work. I remember doing this work with someone in the mindset work. And what was happening was her work was scheduling lunchtime meetings more and more and more. And so she couldn't get out to get lunch. She couldn't even get out like for a quick walk or something. She was used to being able to just have a break during the day. And so basically her employers were taking that away from everybody by scheduling these lunch meetings. And she said she sent out an email and she just said, yeah, from now on, I won't be doing any meetings between this time and this time. Thanks. That was it. And she said that like people came up to her privately and they were like, thank God you said something, like, this is ridiculous that we've been doing this all the time. So it's like, that's the other thing, is when you set those boundaries, you give other people the freedom, because you don't have to be mean about it. Your boundary doesn't have to be a big argument, and it shouldn't be. When you set a boundary, it's like, here's my boundary. You can like it or not like it, or, make choices accordingly, but my boundary is not going to change. And so you can, it's just it's a fence,
Right.
and so it allows other people some freedom.
And when you first do it, it's going to feel weird and you're going to feel a little bit, I don't want them to not like me. And I can't do it. And maybe I should have done it anyway. Yeah. But I'm telling you, it's like riding a bike. The more you do it, the easier it's going to get. You're going to get really good at it.
And it feels, just like you were saying, Joanne, it's like, to me, like the first time I did it, I felt like I was going to hurl. And then I was like, this feels like flying. Like,
it does.
So freeing to just unload everybody else's expectations, set my boundary, and do my thing. Yeah. Like that is just, it's sort of revolutionary. And so it does get easier.
It is.
And then whatever you're choosing to participate in, they're getting the best version of yourself because you made the choice to want to do it.
Right. Exactly. It makes
everybody win.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody wins, because you are now choosing.
It's your choice.
It's your choosing your life, instead of everything being I have to.
And when you pick and choose your choices, you're normally real enthusiastic about the ones you pick. So they're really getting a good version of you. Yeah. Because it's important. And you're saying, I'm going to put some time to this.
Right. And I mean, we know that, there's going to be some things in your life that you don't feel like doing.
Oh, God.
That's just a fact. But we take, as women especially, we take on too much. Like another person that I was talking to, she was saying that her husband doesn't, he can work whatever hours he wants to, but he schedules his day in such a way where he misses the whole like dinner thing. So it's done by the time that he gets home instead of, and
Yeah.
she works full time too. So like she's doing all the work. And even though she said some stuff to him and he's like, oh, I know, I really should try to get home earlier. And he hasn't done it. So for her, we talked about setting a boundary where you're like, hey, babe, you know how we've been talking about that for years? Like that needs to happen this week. So what day are you going to be home by 5
Mhm.
so that you can help, do this because this
Yeah.
is too much for me. And
Mhm.
so it's setting, and I was like, how do you think he's going to respond? She's like, I think he's going to be fine with it. She's like, it's weird. It was weird for her.
Right.
But
Mhm.
it's not, there's nothing wrong with saying that. You have two people working full time. There's nothing wrong with asking him to take a little more responsibility. So,
Right.
so I just think I
Yeah.
hope this has been helpful to everybody. This is such a huge issue. And it's something that you can talk about again and again and again, because it's something that comes up all the time. And for most of us, we're not great at doing it. And so, it's so important though, for your journey in so many ways. We had a lot of people tune in today. So I think that this is obviously every woman knows that this is a huge topic. So I hope you got something out of this. Please comment and we will follow up with you in the comments later. And thanks a lot for tuning in. We're glad that we could Zoom this week and stream this into Facebook. If you haven't seen it, I do have last week's talk. That is also here in the group. So you can scroll down and find that as well. So that was a great talk about how women put their spouse's health above themselves. And I even had my husband on there talking about how that doesn't work and what changed his mind and had him start taking, responsibility for himself. So any parting words, ladies?
Pick a boundary and set one today. That's my challenge for everybody. Even if
Yeah.
it's so small, just try one little small thing. And when it works, you're going to feel so great about it.
Work up from there. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
And if you're overwhelmed and you don't even know where to start, and you're at the point where I don't even know what I like anymore, I don't even know what's what, spend some uninterrupted time and figure out what really fuels you. What are you really passionate about, and start from there. Because I know that some people don't even know where to start.
They don't. I ask women all the time, okay, so what are you passionate about? And it stumps them.
Yeah.
They don't know.
I could tell you, I could do a whole show about what I'm passionate about. And so if you aren't there, ladies, that's another really good idea. So setting small boundaries, think about where you can do that, and spending some time thinking about what you're really passionate about. I mean, those things are huge in moving forward and just making your life what it's supposed to be. So thank you so much to LT and Joanne for joining me today, and to all of you online, and we will see you next week.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.